Right friends, welcome back to Capsule-3. This is on Africa visit by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is undertaking a 4-nation tour starting with Mozambique, followed by South Africa, then Tanzania, Kenya, and these 4 countries are opening up towards Indian Ocean. And please look into the map. This is Africa, and please look into this. These 4 countries are situated towards the east coast of Africa, opening up to Indian Ocean. And in this context, we are going to present Africa in perspective in recent times, especially Africa-India relations. First and the foremost is 3rd India-Africa Forum Summit was held in New Delhi in October 2015, and around 40 heads of state attended the meeting, and this is the record of such sorts. For the first time, 40 heads of state from African countries gathered in the national capital for 3rd India-Africa Forum Summit. And second important thing is, there are several similarities between India and African countries. Like India, several countries in Africa were under the colonial rule. Please look into this slide. During 1945, several countries were under colonial rule. Like India, if you look at Africa, several countries were under the occupation of United Kingdom. Not only that, France occupied several countries. Similarly, Portugal also occupied some countries. So almost entire Africa suffered from colonial rule, just like India. Then India helped several countries in Africa to get independence from colonial rulers during 1950s, 60s and 70s. And China is aggressively pushing for investments in Africa, and China is the major commodity importer from African countries. However, there is a slowdown in China in recent times, but Chinese investments in Africa are quite substantial. But there is a general feeling in African countries that China is exploiting African countries. China is aiming the natural resources of Africa, but without caring for the social issues or environment or development. There is a general feeling across African countries that China is solely exploiting various African nations, and the perspective of India as far as African countries is entirely different when you compare China and Africa and India and Africa. There are strong historical and cultural ties between India and Africa, and India in modern times is associated with human resources development. India established linkages with several educational institutions in Africa. Then the other important aspect is India extended $10 billion of line of credit in overall terms to several African countries, right? And if you look at the importance which India is giving to Africa in recent times, President of the country visited 3 countries, Ghana, Ivory Coast and Namibia. Please look into this slide. These 3 countries are opening up towards west coast, that is towards Atlantic Ocean. Then the Vice President of the country visited Morocco and Tunisia recently. Please look into the slide. The country Morocco and Tunisia are situated somewhat towards the northern part of Africa. Tunisia is opening up to Mediterranean Sea, and Morocco is partly opening up to Mediterranean Sea as well as Atlantic Ocean. And now the Prime Minister's visit to 4 countries. Please look into this slide. The Prime Minister's visit to 4 countries, that is Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya. These 3 countries opening up exclusively towards Indian Ocean, and South Africa majority is towards Indian Ocean, and it has got a coastline towards Atlantic Ocean also. So you can say these 4 countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique and South Africa, opening towards Indian Ocean. So the significance is clearly evident, because these 4 countries can be considered as gateways to interior Africa. So the Prime Minister's choosing these 4 countries has got a special significance. And last year, the Prime Minister visited Seychelles and Mauritius. These two are very important. If you look at the Indian Ocean region is concerned, please look into the slide. Seychelles and Mauritius, these are in Indian Ocean. These are island countries situated in Indian Ocean and from the east coast of Africa, and India's trade with Africa is around $72 billion, but there is a vast scope for improvement. And if you look at Mozambique, which is being visited by the Prime Minister as the first country out of 4 nations ruled by Portuguese from Goa for some time prior to 1961. And don't forget, Mozambique got their independence in the year 1975, and prior to 1961, when Goa was under the control of Portuguese, Mozambique was ruled from Goa. Then Mahatma Gandhi tried his initial days of passive resistance, or you can say civil disobedience and satyagraha in South Africa before coming to India in 1915. Please look into the slide, Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa. And this is the first visit of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi to mainland Africa, and he visited island countries last year, as I have already told you, Seychelles and Mauritius. And Africa's health sector is mainly dependent on generic medicines, and in fact Tanzania gets 36% of their medicines from India. And another important aspect is India needs to integrate Africa into our security architecture. Because of the reason, piracy towards east coast of Africa is quite common. Please look into the slide. In Indian Ocean region towards east coast of Africa, especially Somalia coast is notorious for piracy, and India has to integrate the entire security architecture in cooperation with African countries. Hence, there is every possibility of increasing presence in Africa through economic and trade relations without being dubbed as an exploiter, just like China. And Africa will be the key player for India as far as permanent membership in United Nations Security Council is concerned. And the last point is, India can counter Chinese influence only through establishing trade and economic ties with human touch. And this is possible only through forging partnerships in human resource development, technology linkages, investments in sectors like health, education, infrastructure, right? So this is the right time for the Prime Minister to visit 4 countries which are opening up to Indian Ocean. Not only that, they are gateways to interior Africa, right? So we are going to deliberate under news capsules, visit to each and every country subsequently, and this is in general India and Africa in perspective in recent times. Right friends, have a nice day. Thank you.